Operation Status Quo. Operation Status Quo. Prepare to engage. Operation Status Quo. Ready to engage. Operation Status Quo. Engaged. 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 Oh, hello, people. People of the world. We're still here on Earth, believe it or not. Although we may wish we were not, but we are indeed here together on this beautiful planet. Some think it's spinning, some say it's flat. Either way, we're here together on it, whatever it may be. Today is the 6th of April, the good year 2023. My name's Pete Palma. Welcome to Operation Status Quo. We're here on Operation Status Quo. We learn to observe the status quo. Well, we don't learn to observe it. We are observing it. We observe the status quo, and then we learn to flow with the quo. Because remember, the quo always has its own flow, and you just have to go with that flow or, work around it in some way whatsoever. So I'm not going to do any of my normal nonsense and mania that I do because we have a very special guest. I'm very honored today to have Colleen St. Michaels with us, intuitive guide and teacher, and just wonderful information and knowledge and skills. So we want to present that here today to this beautiful audience. And if you're out there and you're catching this live while we're broadcasting live, please feel free to drop your comments, questions, anything like that in the chat, and we'll go from there. So Colleen, hello and welcome to Operation Status Quo. Well, I'm going to hold the phone up here by the mic because I think it's going to do better. Colleen and I, before we started, I'm trying to figure out the best way to get a phone call through. And unfortunately, between the two of us, we didn't come up with anything.
What is our woe for the quo?
Yeah, exactly. So, Colleen, let's start quick. Well, quickly, I'll just say that, I've known you for some years and
Yes.
came across you during a time. Matter of fact, there was another family member of mine that saw you first and referred me to you. And I'll never forget, just to say, not make a whole story about me and my journey or whatever, but one of the reasons I admire everything you've done and how I feel you've helped me in my life is, I met with you basically during the transition when I was going into my yoga journey, becoming a teacher and stuff like that.
Right.
And, I just remember the messages that you gave me during that time and the, just not say, I don't want to use the word predictions because you know how people get with that kind of stuff. So,
Right,
but
right.
your intuitive nature and your ability to connect with the other side and the vibrations and such, just the things you said to me, I have to be honest, they all lined up. I mean, even my trip to Bali, things you said, how you saw it going, just really amazing to me. So I'm very open-minded. I know other people sometimes are not as much in regard to
Right.
some of those things, but for myself, it's one of the reasons I didn't seek you out as much in the future because I felt like, well, I don't want her to give me all the answers. She's giving me answers and it's shown me how true things are. Let me believe in myself, and,
Right.
and,
And
and
that's the gift of all of it. And that's what, a true intuitive reading should offer you, where you never want to become dependent on the person who is, the conduit of connection. And that's the beautiful, privilege that we have as readers, and especially working with the angelic realms, is that we all have free will, free choice. And like you said, you don't use the word predictions because we don't do predictions. I always used to say, as an angel intuitive, I'm a messenger of the messengers. And so what happens is that when you would sit there and the angels would not focus on the symptoms in our life, they really help us to see the source of maybe what is in misalignment and just help give suggestions. And that's the beauty of free will, is that we have that beautiful energy that can really shift the momentum of the direction we're in based on our, thoughts and our feelings and our healing and our vibrational frequency. So, it makes me happy to see people thrive because I know how the angelic world has imprinted my life to allowing me to see who I really am and get out of my own way.
yes. Well, the thing too, to say is speaking on that is the interesting part is like, I'm sure you've had, dealing with the public in the way you had to in certain ways. Somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, I don't know, what's Uncle Joe saying?" It's like, I don't know Uncle Joe, but you're, so and so is giving me this message. Like, sometimes people, like, one of the things I liked the most and always kept in mind when I saw you was not. I mean, I did have questions sometimes here or there, but
Mm-hmm.
in general, I didn't want to ask questions. Like, I felt like, I'm there, my vibrations there, your vibrations there, and what's meant for me to hear is what's going to come through. You have to give it space to let it be what it is, and it's just another example of not having expectations or judgments or
I think that's an
attachments.
advanced. I think that's an advanced way to look at a session, because I always used to look at a session as though, I didn't take for granted that anybody knew anything. So I would always go into how I read. And I would always say, I will ask that you save questions, because I'd love that if you would come in empty and open.
Right.
And in coming in empty, it meant that you could give yourself space to allow the messages that we need to hear, and not so much the messages we want to hear, right? Because that makes us very human, that we have this impatience that we just want to know that everything's going to be okay.
Right.
Well, inside tip, angels are always going to be like, it's always going to be okay. Well, what I learned, that my okay and their okay were not always on the same page. I used to be like, what the hell was that? You said it'd be okay. And they're like, and in the end, it was okay. But in the moment, it didn't feel it. It felt uncomfortable or whatever that may be. So I always just loved I used to tell people, I was like, I don't want to know information. I want to allow you to be present to hear what your teams in the light see and feel. And then we'll have that conversation and bring it all together.
Yes.
And it's so amazing. Actually, before we got on, I just was on my messenger real quick, and I had a gentleman I had read years ago, and he messaged me, and he was more of the engineer and the very science based type, and he said, "I just wanted to reach out to you." He goes, "I reread notes from our session a few years ago, and it was amazing how the messages that my grandfather gave me are present in my life right now, and how they have helped me so much in making a decision I have to make." And I just thought that was really neat that he, number one, found that notebook that had those messages in it. I
Right.
mean, I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
about you, but like notebooks are like, out of sight, out of mind. And I did say to him, I said, how did the notes come about? And he said, believe it or not, I pulled something out of my closet and it fell on the ground,
Wow.
open.
Yep.
And I was like, signs from the divine are everywhere. And that's where we are time beings, right? But like spirit, angels, our true essence is timeless.
Absolutely.
So really this construct of time is just basically a limiting, prison for us, because we always feel like we're running out of it. Pray for more of it, but don't spend the time we have
Right.
in alignment,
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
we're all guilty of it. It's not, nobody's throwing stones.
No. No.
It's just the awareness of
Yep.
it.
Yep. And that's funny, even what you said about that with the guy finding his notes and how he's saying it relates to stuff today in his life from years ago. And just to finish off the yoga thought, when I got involved, I never thought I'd teach or do any of that kind of thing. And, I really took it seriously, got involved with it, and built myself to a point where now, like, even if I try to walk away from it, it's still in my life, which is, I moved to Florida. First of all, I taught at basically all the studios that were in my area at home, and then I moved down here and was able to find a studio, and they,
Well, you don't even do like regular yoga. Like you do like the hot yoga, right?
Yeah,
like,
the hot,
isn't it like, like
the Bikram style hot yoga. Yes.
like have 911 outside the door for me.
It's not as bad as you think. I'm telling you, it's really. I'm telling you from a point of view of a person that would never even think of doing yoga in his life.
I get it.
You know?
There's a little bit of laughter with that, right? So it's like the things that we think we would be doing and the things that we end up doing, we're like, I mean, I was an Irish Catholic girl who was scared to death of everything. Little did I know that I never saw a medium or a reader before I became a medium on a reader.
Right.
So it's, I think it just is to prove that often we limit ourselves based off of what we're capable of. And I think as a society, as a collective, we're going through this humanity detox individually and then on a collective level, where we're actually seeing live the polarization, and we're seeing it live the way that the shift is awakening people. And I've only said not everybody wakes up happy. Some people wake up angry, and some people go inward, and some people express it outward. And that's why this call to be a intuitive self-led individual will help you to navigate the times of that feels challenging,
Yeah.
because if we're living just wearing the goggles looking at life, it can be a hard jagged pill to swallow. But if we really look at it and be like, okay, everyone is on whatever level their soul chart is having them at, they're in their soul classroom on earth. That's where we have to just let people be who they are, and you have to know who you are.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that, you know, for me personally, I've always been more, I don't like to use the word conspiracy as so much because the way it's, villainized and everything in media, but I was always, kind of questioning things like through my whole life. I wasn't never a person, down with the system per se,
Right.
And, when COVID happened and whatever people's beliefs are, between the pandemic itself and then all the intertwining political division
Right.
that goes on with that, that whole thing just really jump started me. Like, it made me feel like I was in my 20s again, this idealistic, we got to fight the system thing. And, I can't, and that's why even like what you've done with your work over the years and how you've transitioned into something different now,
Right.
I was doing this show starting back, it'll be in November, will be 3 years that I started with this channel. And, when at first I came out, I was definitely more outspoken and a little rude in certain ways, like, and like you're saying, and I agree with you. And I always thought this way, but, because of my semi-comical sense of, background and
Right.
everything else, that, I just spoke in certain ways. But what I'm doing now, and like, why I'm trying to have people like, you share messages as well, is because, I can make jokes all day long about, hey, if you believe this, you're a dope or whatever I used to say,
Right.
But the truth is, and just the same thing you just said perfectly, and I agree, and I say it all the time, this is an earth school. We're all souls, we're all one energy essentially. So, if you're judging someone else, you're really just judging yourself, because there was a time when you were an incarnation that maybe had realizations that, you weren't able to have certain
Absolutely.
realizations. So, for me to be judgmental, or anybody to be judgmental towards you, you're only, bringing yourself back down. So I work hard to find the space. I see what my triggers are. If I get upset, or, I say,
Right.
okay, I just realize it's my ego triggers, and one of the things, I listened to one of your podcasts, by the way, the other day, and you said, your ego is not your amigo. And I love that.
Yeah. Your ego, yeah, it's not your amigo. And I mean, it's a necessary, polarized version of yourself, but it was human created based off of things you watched and, the experiences. And if you happen to be an empath, you tend to absorb environments differently than others. But, everything you said is so true. It's like, it has to be an observation space where you're really looking at who you were, who you are, and what's around you. Because I think, when you're talking about going back to like 2020, I almost felt like, okay, this is a ramp up period. People get to actually now see things that maybe they didn't want to see, because there is a stillness. There was that kind of, you know, no one raised their hand to be, put into quarantine, but it was almost that it made people stop forcing their lives and allowed them to actually start to see it. And I mean, we saw a lot of grief during that period, not just with losses, but people grieving themselves, the illusions of who they thought they were or what they thought life was going to look like. And I think we've just had this very evolutionary period where it's been a very personal journey. I think about a year ago, I did a judgment detox, because if you talk to me, I'd be like, I am not a judgmental person. But after I did my judgment detox, I'm like, I am unconsciously a judgmental person. And it's like, and I did that detox for awareness and for my own vibration. But, I have to find laughter in my findings, because if I don't, well, most of us would just rock and cry. But if we look at the reality that what shifts vibration, right? And we look at what happened in all of 2021, this past few years, is that the world was trying to separate, and the spirit was trying to get us to remember that we are one. And we have to have unity within ourselves before we can have unity consciousness, right?
Yes.
We may be of a soul, but if we have disharmony within our own being, we can't have this unity outside of us. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of injustices as people share in that there's a lot of unhealed versions of ourselves screening out, right? And we look at life as just a giant mirror. So when I did a self audit, I just audited myself of like, what are my thoughts? What are my beliefs? What am I, where's my energy? What is it that I want to, contribute to the collective cup? And in taking that space where it's like we are observers and we're observing what triggers us. We're observing what doesn't really, trigger us and what lane we need to be in. And not every plight is our soul's fight.
Right. Well, yeah,
Right.
personally, I feel that what has happened, like when I reflect back to 2020 and where we are today, I mean, I think it's, well, I mean, like you said, of course, there's been struggles and grief for, it's just part of life, no matter whether, this happened or not, so.
I feel like more people are grieving themselves.
Right.
And it's a personal grief. I mean, yes, we can easily identify with grieving externally with loss, but as we're evolving, we're experiencing as a collective a self grief, that we're losing the parts of ourselves that we thought we knew. We're losing parts of the plan we thought we had in order. And it can be a very vulnerable and uncertain place when everything you felt like you knew feels foreign to you. And that's what ascension is. It's ascending into a new version of yourself, but leaving the versions of yourself that you previously knew with compassion, forgiveness, and freedom.
Yes. Right, without the judgment, like we were
Right.
saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and like for me personally, because I'm a little bit of a kookadoo in certain ways, I think what's happened these past couple of years is just amazing and awesome because I've always been like these structures are strangling our humanity for generations, and I feel like wow, like although whatever people believe about the pandemic, it made the world stop, and it was able to take that
Correct.
time, like you're saying, like you say, people are grieving themselves because no one had the time to even sit and reflect who they are,
Absolutely.
what they want. Everybody's just, and if that didn't happen, we'd still be running 24/7, the way we were. And, and to see all these different points of view coming out and different, exposures of some of our systems and, everything from our education system, monetary system, our healthcare system, nothing's
But
really
it's so beautiful.
right. It's
I mean,
beautiful.
because it's almost as if you look at things, and again, I'm not looking at this from a blue or red state, or it has nothing to do with that,
Right.
right? So it has to do with a higher perspective of our adaptability to adapt the things that are in misalignment and just find a space of acceptance for it, right? So if you think about like over the years, it's like, oh yeah, I remember my grandfather. I was young, and I remember he's like, bankers are crooks, politicians are crooks, this one's a crook, like all these people are crooks, but yet in saying it and knowing it, but not ever doing anything to make a change in it. So it's like accepting what's unacceptable,
Right.
but making a place for it. And I think because what is beautiful is that all of this that is unrest, like, I guess it was 2020, no, 2021. I have like 1,000 t-shirt designs in my head. And one of them was like life under construction. And it's like, we're always in a process of construction because, one room I may be putting beautiful fixtures in, but the next one I may be demoing.
Right.
And because we're in a life that's under construction, the higher the frequency raises as the collective raises, it gives space to expose what is in a misalignment, or opening our eyes to things that are, I mean, I would never call myself a conspiracy theorist, but I absolutely am.
Right. No, I know.
Like, I guess I never labeled myself until it became, I just thought I had different ideas and
Yes.
different thoughts, but I didn't really label it as a conspiracy theorist. I just
No,
thought they were
a
lying.
threat to you're a threat to democracy. Don't you understand?
I had no idea. I mean, it's just, I mean, I really learned, I guess, as taking counsel in, with my spiritual teams of during the whole, and again, I don't care what anybody has chosen to do or chooses to do, but the whole vaccination, debate. And, I knew strongly that I was not going to participate. And for a former people pleaser to really stand strong in something that my spirit just was not okay with, I was really tested, I can say, on a vibrational level, that it was okay to have my choice and not feel that I needed to fight it, debate it, no matter whom it was that had an opposing position against me.
Yes.
And to me, I have great compassion for all people, because I don't think anyone ever set out because they didn't care about people, right? And I don't even look at, like, when people chose to do it, or, my God, their jobs were threatened, families were threatened. It's just, it
Yep.
was, I have great compassion. I don't have any judgment, but yeah, a ton of judgment came at me, like
Yeah.
shots fired.
Yeah.
However, that was my response, was my responsibility. And, I never checked in with the world's population to see if, should I go get my mammogram? Like, should I go? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't waver from what I normally would live my life, just because, I followed all the rules. If it says wear a mask, I wore it, because that's okay. I'm making a choice not to do X, Y, and Z, so I will do X, Y, and Z.
Right. Right.
But,
Right.
it was just interesting how I feel that we're always being tested on some level to see how our growth is going.
Yeah, and if you stand
It's
true
easy
to, yeah, just standing true to who you are and what you believe. For all of us, as long as you're
Mhm.
not hurting other people, that's how I, of course they wanted to make it look like you were if you chose not to, take the I always
Right,
say the jab, but if you,
right, right.
so but I was the same way. I was ready to, I worked all those years for the federal government, and they put that mandate in, and I hadn't,
Hmm.
I would have walked away, which I ended up walking away anyway because I moved, but
Uh-huh.
and that's the same thing I'm saying. Like, it's why I went to Florida, basically, not because, I said, I'm done with all this nonsense. I'm living my life like by my rules, my heart. With good
Right.
intentions, how I want to, and I picked up and did and rebuilt everything here. Now I'm back. I'm here, and I'm teaching yoga in another studio at the community. I'm accepted there the way I was at home, and I have another job. So I mean, if you follow true to who you are and live by, what your soul is guiding you towards, your angels, whatever, however you want to word it, it all works out.
I find it interesting, though, because someone said earlier, um, I was working with a student I'm mentoring, and he said, it's funny because my whole family was like, why are you running from yourself? He had moved locations. And I said, do you feel like you like ran from yourself? And he goes, no. And I was like, we are nomads. Like, we're, this is art school, and we're basically nomads, but we're kind of pinned into the societal structure of, like, this is where you're from. You come there, you stay there, you live there. Like, it's like you become somehow excommunicated from your family if you decide to move,
Yeah.
or that, like, love doesn't travel with you, or that, and that's, I feel like, one message that I always got that really made such a strong impression on my heart from the afterlife when I did mediumship work was that life is meant to be lived, not saved.
Yes. Yeah.
And the majority of us spend so much time saving our life that we don't live it.
Yep. And I always say, life is meant to be lived, not feared. I always look at it that way, because I think people are afraid to take chances. And you speaking about, um, you know, uh, being, way it's looked at to move or something like that. From I understand that 100% because I never thought I would have left my, I was from Philadelphia, my
Right.
whole family, South Philly, then we're
Right.
Jersey, blah, 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 and all
Yeah.
that. And then, and honestly,
Ba, ba, ba.
exactly.
I know. That's ba, da, ba.
That's how we talk over there. I
I
know.
got it. I got it. Jersey girl.
but again, and again, the yoga is really because the first yoga trip I went on to was out to California for training, and that was like a big deal for me to go out to California for a month. I had never, I mean, believe it or not, I was in my early 40s, but I had never, traveled by myself in that capacity,
Right.
and I was
Right.
like, okay, so now I'm going into this whole thing, and I gave myself over to that. Okay, I made it through that trip, and then and really it was the Bali trip when I went to Indonesia, and when I was there, and how how beautiful it was. I mean, over the top, you know. And I said to myself, and it made me realize, I'm like, why do I mean, I could live anywhere. Like I could live here if
Right.
I wanted to. I can live a couple months here. I can live in Florida a couple
Right.
months. Like I can do whatever. Well, why am I limiting myself? Like, and we all limit, even career or anything. I mean, anything you want to do. I mean, I know that's the problem to me, and to get on that kind of tangent is what makes me so passionate about the way our society is that, we're not taught from the beginning, of what we really are, and our expressions and how much we have to offer. We're taught like, okay, well, 1+1 is 2 and that's it. And,
Right.
you got to get a job by this age and you got to get married by this age. And, everybody's just running in circles doing things that they don't even believe in or I mean, even myself, I was talking about this the other day saying, that I've been single for a number of years and it doesn't bother me at all because like,
Right.
I said the other day on my show, you're never going to find me on dear God, please get me a date.com, like because like I just don't care,
Dear God, it's me, Pete.
Dear God, it's me, Pete, please, for God's sake. But, I really don't, not that I don't care, but I mean, I'm not going to ever give away like my sovereignty or like, my
Mhm.
connection and all that for,
Right.
some, whatever, whether it be a
I think you
relationship, a
can
job.
just look at it like, thank you for the alignments, and when we are in that space of, you know, being open, I always just say, thank you for the alignments that are in my highest good. Because a lot of things that I have witnessed, and you mentioned the word fear is like, I was raised with fear being love. You do this, you're going to get hurt. You do this, you're going to, like, so fear and I had a really strange relationship where I've had to learn to listen to the fear, but not lay in the fear and give it give it the attention it needed because fear does teach us, right? It's like
Sure.
has helped me to go in and understand the parts of myself I didn't trust.
Right.
And so, before I used to just lay in fear, roll around in it, tattoo myself with it, like, and then, you know, make a bed with it. And rather than just allowing myself to like listen to it. And
Right.
so with this whole process of even like partnership, it's like I realized everything that I thought would be like a super great thing for me, spirit and the universe has always delivered bigger. So even on my like best manifestations, like when I just let it go and let it in, it was amazing how much the universe outdid what I thought would have been great.
Yes. Yep.
And it's really cool to kind of see it like that and to utilize it like that because I mean when you went to Bali, that was like humongous, right? It's like you look at the whole world, it's like this big, huge planet that we live on, and it's like we're so ingrained to just do what we're told, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, like as babies, I mean, there's nothing purer in the world than when we first come into this world because we are 100% in harmony with the human and the spirit. It's like we live within our instincts on every level. We are pure source in its fullest and finest form. And then we go through Earth School. And then we actually were designed not to remember because we had to grow through the experiences and the lessons. And then, like, every soul has their own wake up date. Not every soul is destined to fully awaken and walk the journey in every lifetime. So I always would work with clients and they would get really impatient with their loved ones. They're like, why can't they see it? Like, this is what's happening. And I'm like, look, your alarm clock went off when it was time for you to wake up. And their alarm clock hasn't gone off yet. So
Yep.
let them be in their fingerprints and you be in yours.
Yep. I agree. I always look at it from the perspective of, it's like you say, we're all one source energy. So each one of us, incarnations, physical bodies, however you want to label it, basically we're all just like little receptors, like
Mm-hmm.
little energetic receptors that are absorbing information and perspectives and sending them back up to the source, which is, recreating the whole dynamic of the oneness in a sense. Like, it's really just so amazing and beautiful. And if people were,
I got to tell you, that theory I had to sit with for a really long time to actually like penetrate it into my full remembrance, I guess you could say, like really just sit, if you're not driving at home, and close your eyes and actually just think of a million fireflies. That's what we are,
Yeah.
right? All created of like that spark of light. And because when we cross over, we're siblings, right? And like meaning that we're all created of the same light. So it's a reunion of the light in that aspect of our soul tribes, our soul communities. So it's just such an interesting thought process. But I do remember laying in bed many a time thinking like, oh, one. It's like I had to get it out of my head that we all have a different skin suit.
Yes, yes, yes.
And, with that skin suit comes personality and it comes ego and it comes, you know, it's just like our own print. But it was just, that was such an interesting, like when you just said it, it sounded very grand, but it did remind me when I was first trying to embrace that. I could say it, but the actual like feeling it felt like I was on a hesitation plan rather than like the fast pass.
And it's hard too because we're from similar kind of backgrounds, so I'm sure, you know, the generations of fear, in those older generation
Oh yeah.
families, and the way they like, even with the Bali trip, when I got to Bali and I called my mom when I got there, you should have heard her on the phone. She was like, oh, thank God you're safe. like I was being shot off into space somewhere, I was like, Mom, I said to Mom, a lot of people get on planes and fly all over the world, like all day long, This is
like
not
you were in cargo as
yeah,
a pirate.
yeah. Just because we're scared to death to leave our backyard doesn't mean other people are,
Isn't it funny? Yeah, and I love your mom.
Yeah, I know. I should, God forbid.
I love your mom.
If she listens, she'll be like, why you talk about me like that?
No, but it honestly, it's with love. But,
Yep.
But I understand that fluently because, I have, like I said, my father was a court stenographer for 40 years. So he was in the courtroom of a major city and heard all of the worst catastrophes that happened in the city, and then literally would come home and just be scared to death that something was going to happen. My mom was his typist.
Right.
So basically, I was 36 years old for the first time I drove over to Philly by myself. And the reason is because, growing up, it was like, if you take the speed line, you're gonna die.
Yeah, right. You're going to die.
You're gonna go at night. You're gonna be dismembered. It's like
yeah.
it was never go out and have a good time. It was like you're gonna ride your bike. It's like you're gonna crack your head open if you hit a patch of sand and your tire slips out. So I really had a strong fear of. I did feel though every time I was going to get hurt, and I recently said in a podcast episode that like I remember going to a friend's house and their parents gave them no warnings before we left the house. And I was like, oh my gosh, their parents don't love them.
How come your parents didn't tell you were going to die tonight? Don't they love you?
Like in my head, I was like, my God, my parents love me. Like I got all the precautions and they got nothing.
Yeah.
And it was like, have a good time. I'm like, what's that? And I was about 7. So I was like, they're not coming with us. Like they're not, and I realized that I did have a strong fear. And it did hold me back from a lot of things that potentially I would have wanted to. But I also look at, thank God I had that guilty Catholic conscience because the coin would have flipped either way. I could have been a recluse or
Yeah.
or follow the rules. So I'm glad I did follow the rules.
Well, for me is the opposite because I'm not a quiet person. So, my grandfather, he always used to tell me, you're going to end up dead or in jail with that mouth. It's what he would tell me all the time. So I was like, well, I don't know. I guess jail would be better. I'm not really sure, but it's going to be one of these paths for me. Even when I was doing the show, like when I had first started, and it was different kind of things that I was doing and saying. I used to think of him a lot because he would always say to me, Pete, do yourself a favor. Keep your mouth shut. And I said, well,
You
maybe
know,
that's
a
the
good old
angels.
Italian love.
Yeah, it's the old town. I said, well, maybe that's like his message from the angels telling me like not. That's why I kind of like went off a couple times, came back. I took content down, put new content up. Only because truthfully, is I really care about people, and I'm doing this
Right.
because it resonates naturally to me to speak, to do a show, to all I have a lot of ideas. I'm creative, funny. I'm not trying to toot
Absolutely.
my horn or anything like that. I just mean it's just
Toot your horn.
no, I just mean it from
Toot
the
toot.
I just mean it from the idea of like, that's my skill. Like, some people
You
are
want to
great.
share.
Yeah, and some people are great carpenters or whatever,
Hmm.
It's like I can do this without thinking twice. So and but I want to make sure that I'm doing it from a place of good intention. I'm not saying I'll never make a joke or insult a little bit or I mean comedy's comedy in certain regards. So it's
Look,
it is
I'm sassy. Like,
right.
I have a very witty kind of, and I realized that like, I remember when I first woke up, like almost 17 some years ago, and nobody was awakened at that point. So like, I just felt like I was like literally in a spiritual closet, and I didn't know what all this was, but I was hiding it because I was like, what is this? Like, what, like, and I just felt alive learning about it. And it was really interesting how I remember going to my first like spiritual event. I think I drove like 3 hours away so I would never be recognized. I don't know who I thought was going to see me. Like, it was like that much of in hiding. And
Yes.
I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet like my people. Like, I was Bambi coming out and just like so excited, like, "Oh, spiritual event.
Yeah.
And I remember walking in and feeling so different. And like the room, I felt like it was like an expo, and I was wearing heels, and I had my hair and my nails and all this other stuff. And I felt like everyone looked at me like, "What?" Like, and I was dressed differently. Like, I was not a naturalist, I guess you could say. Like, I wasn't wearing patchouli, and I love patchouli now, but I'm just saying, like, it looked very natural. And I was not very well appreciated or accepted. I thought I was going to walk in and everybody would be like, we all have one cause and one heart. And it didn't happen. And I remember driving home the 2 hours and a half hours crying. And I was like, Angel's like, where do I fit? Like, where? I, I don't want to change. Like, I want to get my hair dyed and I want to have my nails and I want to have sparkle and I want to, I don't want to change. And I just remember a message coming through from the angels saying, like, we don't want you to change. Like, be you.
Right.
You're like, be your humor. Like, be silly, be serious, but just, we have enough people who have changed from their source. We're not asking you to change. We just want you to change the vision and the view of what people think a medium or a spiritualist is.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. And I felt relieved because I was like, so I can like still wear my sparkly belts and like, my Peg Bundy leopard. And it was really cool though, because it was like, how often do we feel out of place doing something like you going into the yoga world?
Yeah, and I honestly, I had basically the same experience, although a little different because when I first got in, going to the teacher trainings and different things, I was very humble, just taking it in, and I, wanted to fit with the community, and I was trying to be, coming off different things in my life, I wanted to be more just gracious in the way I approach people and blah blah blah. But I did notice. I mean, it really hit me when COVID and everything happened because I felt, oh my goodness, like this community is. They really let me. I don't want to say they let me down, but I
Mm-hmm.
really just thought they would have been way more open to some of the stuff you and I are discussing today in a way that like, but yet they were, the one studio, they wouldn't let you in if you didn't wear a mask. It's like, I'm not trying to say right or wrong. All I mean is like, not for anything. You're doing yoga. It's 100 and something degrees. You're going to cover somebody's face and not let them
Yeah.
breathe. It just doesn't make
I
any
guess
sense.
I guess you know what I mean. I think it really brought people to a place of fear that they were just, their whole worlds were built on that business. That was, it's like it's the mob mentality is what it was, and so and that's where the choice comes in and says, okay, well, I'm choosing this path, right? And thankfully that it did happen like that because then you were able to then really sit in it and say, okay, well, then I am going to take the leap. And for me, leaps mean living every available possibility.
Yep.
That you shifted your, direction. You took your funny ass self and you put yourself on the road.
Yep.
And it's the coolest thing about it is like you can always go home.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, this is home now. I'll tell you that.
exactly.
You
But
know.
that's what's so amazing is that, when like everything looks like so final, like you make a decision, it's like, well, is that your final decision? It's like, well, for this minute it is, but it doesn't mean that it has to be forever.
Right.
And that's where I feel like when we hold so tightly on to, what we know. And I remember like years ago learning and reading and really working on the concept of like I am a professional self awareness person for myself. Like I constantly am an investigator and I got crimes going on inside of me and I need to solve them. And that's again, I like talking about the humor. It's like everything I do has lightness. I mean, I was a medium for 12 years. I sat with over 100,000 people. I worked with intensity of people's, worst moments and their grief and their difficult times. But even in that space, messaging came through with at times lightness. And, when we laugh, our vibration raises. Everything and anything revolves around our vibration.
Yes.
And to stand true to yourself through all of these changes and through everything, that is what is constantly being tested. So if you read something and it really flares you up, well, whomever that was that just threw a marble into your or a smoke bomb into your very peaceful space, it's our responsibility to say, do I give permission to that person to disrupt me? Or do I look at it and say, okay, well, that's where they're vibrating from, but I'm not going to give my power away and disrupt my vibration because I work freaking hard to get it to where it is.
Yes.
And as the vibration shifts, and me as personally, that I am very honest when it comes to the things that most people don't talk about. Like, when I got like these messages that I was to shift my business, that I was to move from the one-on-ones and then start teaching, that the collective is ready now to never become dependent on anyone, and that we all have this gift, and that it was part of my shift. And I'm a soldier of the light, and on the ground my mission shifted. Well, I'm not going to be like, oh, okay, great, thanks for the new mission. I mean, I had to grieve it. I had to go through the fears. I had to go, through rocking and tucking my thumb of like, I need to reinforce this next level of trust, that I trust this information coming through me. I trust the path that's going to be put in front of me. And I needed to grieve what was something that I truly did love.
Right.
Most people don't leave a career that they truly are great at and are doing well at and have no ill will against it.
What were you able to do for yourself to just speaking of like
Mhm.
dealing with all those people, and some of them I'm sure were wonderful and open, and then I know we've spoken before, that you've
I
told me.
have to say, I was truly blessed.
But I mean, how did
I
you deal
always
with your the energy, clearing energy from yourself after taking on so many other people's energy during the day?
so spiritual hygiene is the number one practice that of consistency in my world. I'm not a super ritualistic person. Um, I used to call it living in the moment. I just call it unstructured.
Yeah,
At
yeah,
times, like, but when it comes to energy and shielding, I am a snob. It is not negotiable for me. It's my energy is shielded and protected, and it's not in fear. It's out of respect for my energy,
yes,
and it allows me to be 100% observant and not absorbent of anyone's energy, and it gives them free space to express out what they're feeling, whether it is grief, whether it is anger, frustration, whatever awarenesses they're coming into. It gives them a free reign to be able to have space held for them in a loving place, and it does not create me to feel affected by it, so that I can be that conduit that is able to give the messages and work with, I think majority I worked with a lot of people who experienced overdose addiction, family loss. I ended up writing a book called The Other Side of Addiction, The Afterlife, because over an 8-year span, I just kept seeing the numbers growing and growing and growing. And I was like, this community is completely paralyzed in fear because the family becomes addicted to the addiction without actually with them being sober.
Right.
And because it is an epidemic, and it's something that, so many families, and it is a thief of the light, because when we think about a person passing from addiction, well, the family is grieving so much, and a lot of times people feel that they're responsible for the family members, or that they could have fixed them, or that they could have helped them, or if they didn't show tough love, whatever it may be.
Right.
It's a very different grief than other griefs, right? So I worked with a lot of families with suicide. I worked a ton with families that have lost children, and these are really, really heavy, heavy griefs. Of course, natural passings as well, but the healing aspect of it, with the combination of their loved one coming through and the angelic teams, and then telling people how their loved ones are communicating with them and how the vibration, I really can say, if I didn't have my shields on, I mean, I would be spooning someone, crying with them, because I can't even watch, like, just, I am an empath. I was driving the other day and I watched a goose on the side of the road, but its partner was over there. I couldn't even contain myself. I was hysterical crying because this goose was looking at its partner who had been hit. And I'm like, I couldn't breathe. I was like, I cried out thinking about it, because it was like, I kept humanizing this goose, and like I could feel the grief. And then it was just, everyone who knows me personally always used to say, I don't know how you do, because you can't even watch TV without crying or see a commercial. And because I was in my shield, I was able to create a space. No one, how do I look at it, is people have enough people in their life feeling sorry and feeling bad for them. They don't need any more of those heavy rocks put in their already heavy backpack. So my job was to be a source of light that is not adding rocks to their backpack. It's to help release some of these heavy rocks, so that they can feel air in their lungs, so that they can feel that there is a connection, that they can feel that they can breathe and it not hurt so much.
Yes.
Even if it's for a moment.
Yes.
But then, and that aspect of it, it was a privilege. I was in Soul's classroom for 13 years, and it was a privilege. And I didn't want to be a medium.
Well, that was one of the one of the questions I actually had for you is like, what was, just because I never asked you this before, but out of curiosity of how it came to be that you even realized you had these skills, and was it something that you were able to get into, or did you have to kind of hide it because people didn't understand, or were you...
So my daughter was probably 2 at the time. She's now 24. So I was walking through a bookstore, and it was the craziest thing, is that I had to change her diaper, and being Irish Catholic, it was always like, don't go into the metaphysical section. So at that placement, the restroom was near the metaphysical section. I had to walk past.
Well, when nature calls.
Right? A little diaper needed to be changed.
That's right.
And so I was walking through, and literally a book flew off the shelf and at my feet. And it was called Messages from Your Angels. And I was like, quick to the Our Father, looked down, and I was like, what the heck is this? I was like, Messages from Your Angels. And then I was like, I felt like I got hot. And then I got afraid. And then I got curious.
Right.
And I remember picking up the book. And I was like, this doesn't seem bad. This doesn't seem like it's bad energy or, demonic stuff. And I bought the book, and then I read it like I had a dirty habit, like that I was hiding.
Right.
And I remember opening the pages, and my heart felt alive. For the first time, I heard the word, you're an empath. And I never understood why I always felt like such an oddball my entire life, that I could feel things that people didn't say. Like, I could feel when someone was bothered by something but not using their words. I could feel when someone felt judgment but wasn't showing it with their mask. Like, I always felt, they used to call me a profiler in high school because, and I'm like, I don't even know why, like, no one else feels this. Like, this is not okay. Like, something doesn't feel right, you know? And after being told I was wrong for so long, that I was crazy, I was just making shit up, I was, you know, whatever people
Yeah.
say.
Yes.
And I just remember me shutting down my voice, and I was like, I guess I am wrong, because at that time, majority ruled. You know, it's like, well, if the majority of people think it, then it must be true. And I self taught, and I just felt alive. I felt like the angels knew me. I had always had a really strong relationship with God, and but I shifted that relationship from fear to full embodiment of knowing that in myself, in living in fear and rejecting these parts of myself, that I was rejecting the parts that God felt I was worthy to have. And that shifted me at that time a lot. And then I don't know, it was just, I started this to heal my life. I didn't start it to help others. I started getting the information that I need to share this, because I was like, why aren't we taught this in school? Like, this is, our intuition is our entire clarity in one sole, aspect of ourselves. Like, it's clarity. It is our GPS. It matches our fingerprints. It is the roadmap to feeling successful in our own fingerprints. But yet we're not taught to trust it. We're actually taught to go against it. And as I started working with it, and I was like, I've got to share this. I've got to share the angels. Like, I just don't understand. Like, people need to know about this. Because God knows when I like something, give me the megaphone, because it's being broadcasted. And it was just so powerful that I was like, I was going to start a business, and I started it named Angel Wisdom.
Yes.
And I quit my job, and as a single mother, and I was like, as I say, I effed it, which means I put it all on faith. I faithed it. And it was just this beautiful synchronicity of how, like, the word of mouth came about. And I guess it was like a year and a half, almost 2 years into doing angel readings, people's loved ones started coming through. And I was like Scooby Doo and Shaggy. I was like, get the shingle off the shack. I'm shutting it down. Like, I never asked for this. I I was like, not interested in it. And then the angel said, if you would just be open to learning it with us, we can share with you the experience that you're going to be able to reach people and introduce us to people through educating people that our loved ones who crossed are not angels. They're a separate force of support that are with us, and that we have these teams in the light. And at that point, I would love the angels. I still love the angels. I'm still an angelholic. That I went through like a boot camp and learned. And my gosh, it was the most amazing way to learn to live, is by talking with the afterlife.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, just to say it in a way of like, because technically it's all one thing anyway. So
Correct.
being connected that way, to me, it's so much comfort. And although I don't, have the same skill, and well, you would say we all do, just to hone
Mm-hmm.
it, but just relatively speaking, that if that's not my forte as much,
Mm-hmm.
I will say just how I've learned to just be aware that it exists and to be open to letting life, like
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about, like just let I'm not living life is living through me, like I'm just
Right.
a conduit, and
Mm-hmm.
my move here to Florida is like really a perfect example. Just the way, I mean, from the littlest things of, the first apartment I got when I was moving here, I was all ready to go, and then I got a call from them like 2 weeks before I was supposed to move, and well, like 3 weeks before I was was supposed to move, saying that the construction wasn't done yet, and it was going to be another couple months before I can move. And I was like, I got to listen. I don't think you understand. Like, I got everything packed, ready to go. We set a date. But anyway, long story short, I wound up finding another apartment complex that was right down the street from that one, and it all worked out. I mean, I did move again, and I've moved 3 times. My third move since I've been here, and I'm not getting into the whole story of why and what, but I just mean every time everything.
Angel number 3, and and it's kind of one of those things where I don't know about you. I'm not going to speak for you, but myself, I seem to have been a student of this life who often hit many obstacles. I feel like I'm like a hurdler, and like I can't even get over the first hurdle, and like literally my foot is tripping on the next one because I can't get up in time. Like,
Right.
and what I realized in my self audit is that I'm rigid. I may come and a lot of levels, I have a lot of fluidity, but when it came to certain things about control or what I think or the plan or kind of diving in or leaning in certain directions, is that I was being shown how rigid I was in fear. Because, when we're about to make that leap and make those changes, we kind of convince ourselves that, like, okay, this is the plan. I'm going to be here. And then I'm going to be here. And this is going to be. So it's kind of like we console ourselves with that fear with a plan.
Yes.
Well, often, that plan isn't the plan or the destination. It's a stopping point. And I would make it like, I'd build a home, build a castle, and then like, put my flag in the ground. And the next thing you know, like the winds would come. And I used to get upset and be like, what the hell is that, Angels? Like, I thought this was it,
Yeah.
And they're, and they were like, this is just phase 1. It's like, I don't know what hiker language is, when people are like hiking Mount Kilimanjaro, they have different marker points or whatnot. It's just the point. It's not the destination.
Yes. Well, I saw the movie Everest. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. I'm never hiking up no mountain.
No. I just was not built that way to feel that I need to endure the cold. Like I watch and like what are the adrenaline junkies like that just totally get like this rush of like I just think like I don't need any more cortisol running through me.
Right. I mean, you got angels zipping through you all the time. You're busy.
No, I just have to say, like, I had enough like living in a trauma response for so many years. Like, I don't need any more dopamine rushes or any kind of like. I admire them and I love to watch them, and I love those stories of people who literally are just soul, fighters and just will do these things that just create such adrenaline rushes. But yeah, I'm like kind of like a meditation rusher,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
Zen rusher.
I say it to myself, like it's just so crazy. I can't even put it into words the way, like I say, just saying, realize like, you're just riding the wave of life in a sense. And like, if you just, how God puts things in your life and how it works out. I'm saying for myself, like, I can say, oh, I don't like, the way our world structure is. Everybody's running around all day and blah, 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 all that stuff I say. But the truth is I'm not, right? I've created my life where I'm working from home. I'm living in, warm, beautiful weather. There's a pool in my neighborhood. I go swimming almost every day. Like, if other people want to, run around. I mean, I don't mean it. I know other people have different responsibilities. I don't have kids and that kind of thing that take up so much more time and, different aspects like that. But
it doesn't make it
right.
Often people think because they're comparing themselves, like there's going to be, I have a podcast recorded that's coming out in a few weeks called when we, in a line, it's like when we compare ourselves to others, we're eavesdropping on God's conversation with their soul.
Mm.
And, when it comes to like, often I would see this with families that like, if there's 3 or 4 siblings and a parent becomes ill, well, suddenly if there's one child who's not married, somehow they have no responsibilities compared to the one who has 2 children or this. Like, and I think that's where a lot of times we can hold a lot of resentments towards people or whatnot, that we think because it's not our life that it's not important to theirs.
Right.
Like people who don't have children, it doesn't make their life any less busy or important. it just makes it their life.
Right.
So
I
it's
agree.
right. It's a personal choice, however you choose to live it. Like, I'm a single mom. I have two children. My daughter's now 23. My son's going to be 16. I've been a single mom running a business and juggling everything. And you know what? I'm I don't have ever a day for, like, of like, what was me or anything. It's like I love them. They're my great teammates. I'm really happy, but I would never turn to someone and be like, "You have no idea," because you just don't. Like, I wouldn't do that,
Yes. When I get
right?
it,
So
comparing's the worst thing to do. Yourself to anybody in situations like you said. Going back to the crux of everything we were saying, it's all one energy, and everything's meant to be the way it is because there's all different levels and designs, and everybody's on a different journey. So
yeah,
having kids for one person, it might not be right for another person, or whatever the case may be. I think a lot of people, quite honestly, get resentful too in certain ways, just because they're not living. Whether kids or not kids, they're just not living true to what they really want either way. So it's easy to point fingers at someone else when they think that they're, oh, look, they're doing what they want to do, and it's not like, well, hey, I'm not doing what I want to do. I mean, like, I'm trying to figure myself out and be the best me I can be, because what I put out contributes to the collective as well. So we
right.
all should be thinking that way of, how can I be my best, whatever that best is, whatever it's meant to be.
Even when, I think it's kind of like blame, right? Again, I keep talking about this audit. It was very impactful when I did my self audit, and I did it in a loving way. But I just audited the different areas of my life so that I could be more aware with me, um, and to transition. I needed to make transitions, but I had to understand what was sitting on top of me having fluidity in the transition. So that's where the audit came in.
Right.
And when it's like, when we look at this big picture, it's like, I wish everyone would just take a pause and go inside themselves. And if we lived in a world where we took responsibility for our choices and our actions and our wounds, it would be such a different space, because it wouldn't be everyone going at everybody else. It would just be a support system, right? And if I heal myself and I hold your hand, well, we're now going to light up a light grid. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you take another hand and you hold it, just imagine like a city grid around the globe. It's just really going to offer a lot of movement and really allowing that light quota to grow.
Yes.
But blame, I realized in my audit that there was unconscious blame going on for certain things. And it really was sitting on top of fear and a lack of trust in myself. So it was easier just to look around and be like you were sharing about, like, if maybe someone who has kids feels like, well, if I didn't have kids, then I wouldn't be I would have more time. That's just making assumptions, right?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like,
Yeah. You don't
that's
know
like
what.
saying, like, if I didn't eat that cupcake, I would be this weight. Well, that's not true either.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like,
Enjoy the
it's like,
cupcake, please. Enjoy the cupcake.
exactly, right. So it's easy to stand in that space where you can future, I always say to my kids, I appreciate that you have a grand view for the future you, but if the present you doesn't change something, it's not going to look much different in the future.
Right, right.
Right. And I was like, because I was telling my kids, stop investing in the future you when the today you's not doing shit.
Yeah, right. Do you want that future you? It's like you better get
Right. And
today straight.
right. Well, it's just like the shift in a little bit of like a mindset. And when you were talking earlier, I had to laugh because you were saying about, like, we're told at this age we need to be doing this, and at this age. And that is one of the biggest griefs that I always have witnessed with people, is that what they thought was going to be or what should have been, because, for ladies, sometimes at 16 years old, they were like, I'm going to be married by 27. I'm going to have two babies by this age. And when that doesn't happen, they feel almost that they failed something.
Right,
But
right.
they forget that when they were cultivating their future plan, that they didn't put anyone else's energy into it to have to align to that, or that their soul chart even was open to that at that period of time.
Right.
Because things come to us when it's our time to receive it. And I remember my daughter, when she turned 18, she was like, in theory, everybody knew what they were going to do. They had a plan and all this other stuff. And she's like, Mom, just tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. I was like, Gianna, try everything and fail. And she was like, that is the worst advice
Thanks a lot,
ever.
Mom.
I said, try everything. Take classes.
Yeah.
Do. And she's like, now that she's in the world and understands it differently, she's like, thank you. She was mad at me at that time because I said, Gianna, to assume that you are 18 years old and you should have the rest of your life figured out is a punishment. It's a disservice to you.
Yes.
I said, because at that point, you're going to be 45 years old, bowed down with tons of responsibility. And then somehow you are going to be questioning what you do, what your passions are, what you like, what you don't like. You're just going to be one giant question mark.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take opportunities to try something and fail, right? So for me, acronyms are life. Fail is first attempts in learning.
Yep.
And when she did that, I mean, quickly we learned she'll never do nursing because she took herself to the ER like 5 nights because she was like a hypochondriac after sitting in courses, learning about different things that she suddenly diagnosed herself with at night when she was having a panic attack.
So I got everything, Mom. I'm taking classes. I got everything.
Oh my God. I was like, and she was famous for literally driving herself to the ER and then calling me from the car. And I'm like, I'm in the same house with you. Like, what are we doing? Like, where are you? And she's like, I got this, and I was like, gee, you're done. You're done nursing because you're just not built for that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not built for that with you.
Yeah. But no, and speaking on what you're saying, like I definitely think like, and I believe we're moving in this direction, humanity. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about everything that's happening is that, just the consciousness is rising. And that's one of the reasons we're, the vibrations and frequencies of the old structures, they can't maintain in the 3D paradigm anymore, because of the rise in consciousness. So that's why we're seeing all the disruptions and such that we see. And I'm just always, I say it all the time is that, we're all students here in the Earth School, as you would say, Earth School too, and the truth is, instead of like pointing fingers and judging, we should all be realizing that we're all going through the same type of, lessons and just be supportive and, help each other and compassionate instead of, trying to like, oh, well, at least I'm not as bad as that person. It's like
Right.
this kill
Well,
every,
if you really, strip us down and understand that our physical age has no bearing on anything, it is all about our soul age and the evolution of our soul. And one way that I have been able to teach people as well as adapt in my own thinking is that I'm an old soul. And to be an old soul, I had to be a stupid, young, bitty soul.
Right.
in other lifetimes. So if I see people who maybe are, sticking their wet finger in the socket over and over and over again, I'm not going to judge them because you know what? That's where they're at on that page of their lesson in their classroom.
Yes.
And I've graduated that classroom, so I'm going to send them love. It doesn't mean I need to have them in my space.
Exactly.
But I'm going to send them love and I'm going to go on my way.
Right.
And that's where we're really meeting people at this very tender space where there's a vulnerability, that there's this exposed, emotional, tsunami that's happening in a lot of people, whether they're acknowledging that it is an awakening or a shifting or a raise in consciousness. But we can't negotiate ourselves anymore to be in multiple energies at one time.
Yes.
And we really have to make the commitment that, Michael Jackson's song, when I was a kid and it came out, The Man in the Mirror,
Yeah.
like you hear it, you sing the lyrics, but man, when you really listen to that song,
That's right. I agree. Yep.
That song, like, it has to start with the person in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And that aspect of allowing ourselves to not be such a reactive world, to be more proactive with our inner turmoil so that when we do have a cause and when we do have a plight and when we do have something that we're standing for, it is based off of that peace warrior within us and not the wounded warrior that's just running reckless.
That's right. If you want to
Right.
make the
So,
world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make that change.
yes.
But it really is. It really is. It is so true. You know, honestly, like that's why. I mean, I don't want to say I take life lightly in a sense, but I mean, I just sometimes I just can't even believe how seriously people. I always say seriously. There's nothing that serious. Please, you know. Like, I know
But
it
listen
seems
to your
serious, but
words.
you know, but
Listen to your words lightly, right? We're light beings, and laughter raises our light quota. Let's see, what is that movie, Monsters Inc.? And
okay.
they needed like scares to make the energy of the community. Did you ever watch it? It's a kids movie.
I know the
But
movie. I did not see
so
that one, but I do know.
the theory is they get their energy from scares. So scaring little kids is how they get the energy that fuels their community in Monsters Inc.
Well, there you go. Going down that conspiracy road. You know, they talk about that with the Draco, the reptilians, the
Mm-hmm.
aliens that are, you know, they feed
Yeah,
off of fear, and that's why our society is built the way it is to keep humanity scared because they're actually feeding off of our
correct.
energetic vibrations. Yeah.
Right,
So
because if the planet raises, right, and and this conspiracy theory, it's like also when you look at addiction loss, and addiction is a thief of the light, and so not only is it a thief of the one light, but also imagine, I guess it was a statistic last there were 181,000 noted addiction deaths. Well, now put two people who love that person and then four people who love that person. It's now like a bowling alley where your pins are lined up, and that person who has crossed from the addiction is the first pin, but the family is the life being extinguished because of the level of grief that they have lived a living grief as the person that is going through addiction. It's a grief of the loved one that you loved living, and it is one of the biggest extinguishers of the light because grief lowers the vibration equally as fast as fear does.
hmm
And and that's where we have to become that inner independent to understand that we have this strong intuitive voice that is guiding us out of the fear, right? And you can ask yourself, listeners, if you're coming from a place of love or a place of fear.
right.
And if you're not coming from a place of love, then investigate it, right? That's why I always say I'm an emotional investigator. It's like the crime inside, and I'm the investigator. And what do? We ask questions inside. We don't seek answers outside.
Yes. And to speak further on that, I just think it's so important too to just be aware of, you know, on our human level of, you know, we all have, you know, inner child crap and triggers
Mhm.
and, you know, and I just mean like every time, you know,
Well, that's why we're here at this point too. I mean, we're clearing out the lineage lines of ancestral, disruption and beliefs. We're clearing family lines out. We're clearing. I mean, it's not a small task to be on this Earth School journey now. I mean, it is a volunteerism that we as souls took on, and remembering that we took it on because we've trained for it.
yes.
And that is where light workers need to remember that they are enough, and the fear that they're feeling is basically because their greatness is blooming. And coming into this world as light workers, we were told to be quiet with our light and be observers to understand the lay of the land. So that natural fear that steps in that says like, oh shit, I'm afraid of how this is going to look or what's going to be, what's going to happen. It's like, now's the time for light workers to really tend into their own inner wounds and allow their light to be a contribution. And, we need light workers, star seeds. We need you know, all the trained light soldiers to allow themselves on whatever level they're showing up in this world to just be that lighthouse for people,
Mm-hmm.
because we can't lighthouses don't chase people, lighthouses stand strong and guide people.
Yes. That's a perfect thought of how we should
Hmm.
be moving forward with everything. So listen, I know we've been going here talking for over. We're about like an hour and 14 minutes. We're
Oh,
doing pretty good.
geez.
It's a real nice conversation. But
Yeah.
so I don't want to keep you long, but I want to just what do you? I don't know if you see things in this way, but I mean, as far as how
Hmm.
things have been shaken out, do you get any messages or whatnot of like what I know you're not gonna I'm not looking for you to make predictions like how these people do,
Hmm.
but there's a lot going on that people are concerned about between the banking and the politics and everything. And
Right.
so I mean, just what kind of general vibes do you get
So
of where we're headed within the next couple of years?
the angels have said to me that my most important resource is my energy, and that not everyone has the same mission. Like some souls are destined for this and some souls are destined for that. So even though we are in a collective light, I think what we're seeing now more than ever is like there is true darkness in this world, that, as there is light, there is dark. And what was once on the air is now in a sense on the ground. And it's being mindful of what your attachments are, and being mindful of allowing yourself to grieve. If you feel afraid, then feel it. If you feel unsteady, then allow yourself to feel it. There's no more suffocation and false prophecies. It's like, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, but you don't believe it.
Right,
It's
right.
really about allowing yourself to integrate all the parts of what you feel, and going into the shadow parts of yourself so that as I said before we started, that the angels always said you're always going to be okay.
Yes.
And at this point, I believe it because I do believe in humanity, and I do believe that we, as a awoken community and a awoken healed community, can truly shift and create a new earth, in a sense, as they're calling it. But like, I look at the babies that are being born into this world, they are really powerful babies. Like, there used to be a book called the first 9 months of life, like after they come out, like what to expect the first year. And they used to say like month 3, the babies will hold their head up. Now they're doing it at like month 1.
Right,
These
right.
new babies are just built different. Like, they're built like awake, alert. Like, they're souls that are the next wave of change, right? And we here, as this awoken, you know, space that we're in now, we're like lumberjacks meeting a dense forest, and we're just moving down the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's this call to be more aware of what your personal vibration is. It's not to get caught up in all of the assaults coming at you via the news, via fear, via, you know, even in the spiritual community, I feel there's a polarization because there's a lot of newly awakened, which is wonderful and beautiful, but not all the information they're getting is accurate,
Yes.
because there's a lot of interference I'm seeing within the like trickster realms and like that, where they're talking to false lights, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also very convincing. I see a lot of good intentions, but they're. I guess how I look at it is like they haven't done their work to help them hold the vibration so that they don't become susceptible to being kind of overtaken by the shifting energies as they are now. Because the energies, I mean, it is a practice of grounding right now. So the angels keep sharing that they want us as a whole to remember who we are, to be discerning as to who and what and where we give our energy, and to really connect in with nature, and to know that even in private moments you can send light to our planet and send healing to our planet, because our planet does need healing. I mean, Mother Nature's had enough
Yeah.
on a lot of levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't keep extracting and extracting. And the biggest message to help navigate with the banking and the politics and everything is that the timelines are not set, that we're constantly able to, as a collective, to keep shifting, in a sense, the timelines, that it depends on what vibrational awareness that you're viewing the experiences that are happening.
Yes, I would agree with
Right.
that
So,
because essentially what our outside world is our reflection. I mean, I know it's a community, so it's but at the same time, like your life can be what you want it to be. It's really a reflection of what's you got going on
right. I,
inside.
I do see a lot, and then I have sat with a lot of people, like students, courses, classes, that have shared that, like, they feel um, a deep grief, about for things. And I said, well, I think a lot of it is our own karmic clearing and our own past life experiences that we're clearing out on a level that we're, you know, maybe grieving if there was time in Atlantis, or, grieving in places where maybe there wasn't a victory.
Right.
So it may not be a consciousness that is in our physical body, but our soul's consciousness is very aware of it. And we're kind of cleansing and clearing the karmic out. The angels and our teams in the light want us to remember that we are not alone, that we have teams in the light, and that we're meant to lean in and embody the assistance that they're willing and wanting and capable of giving us, and to be gentle with our bodies, to be more mindful of our foods, to be more mindful of our physicality, because our souls are ascending very quickly with vibrational information and downloads that are coming in, but our physical bodies have been so polluted that our bodies aren't able to keep up with our spirit.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And
Right.
so it's the reunion between our wholeness of our physical and our spirit self, to be a light bridge and to anchor light from both realms. Like, that's what we are. As
Mm.
light workers, we're light bridges. And of living in both existences and then anchoring the light into here. Like, imagine a hot air balloon, and it's our job to tether that balloon to this earth and bring that light into this planet.
Yes.
And that's what, like you said, the darker forces are trying to block that from being done. It's like they're trying to cut the cords that are tethering those balloons in.
Yep.
They're not going to win.
Right. No, I agree. Like you say, you were talking about people following the false people. I always say too, the devil comes as your friend. So, you have to be mindful of, where you're putting your energy. So,
It's interesting. There's a TV show called Luther, and someone had said before, like, oh, you have to watch it. It's good entertainment, whatnot. And so I happened to be somewhere, and the show was on, and there was one line that actually stood out to me, and it said, it was this character who was playing Luther. And he said, I don't seek people out. They seek me. I just show up. And I was like, ooh. And they said, with their intentions, with their words, like, we think about the power of our words, like, put all the letters together. What is it to spell? Our word is our wand. Like, our words are very powerful. And like, when people are like, oh, I would do anything to be famous. I would just die to have this, right? Well, those are very strong, powerful words, even though said in jest. And, we look at dark energies, it's what they do. They prey on that that desire, or that want, that fear. It's not wrong to desire anything, but when you lack the belief that it will happen, you're willing to maybe take the shortcut. But no, in the end, it's not the shortcut.
no, right. Exactly right. Exactly right. So, Colleen, I
Mm-hmm.
think these have been some a great conversation and great messages. And when you finally get to go back and watch this, and you see that I'm holding the phone the whole time against the microphone, you're gonna
Hold the phone.
you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh at me. But this is good though, because we'll get it straightened
Yeah,
out. A
I
lot of
apologize. I couldn't do the live. It was just so much construction. I'm like literally
no, no.
hiding in a space that I
You know
can
what I
have
could have done
silence.
too when I thought about it after as I'm doing this now, I was thinking, I probably could have still talked to you through Facebook Messenger just without the video, right? And then it would have came through the computer, and I could have had
Yeah,
just your website or something up on the screen. But hey, it's
it's
everything.
fine.
It's about, to me, it's about just having people on sharing the messages. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to make it look all perfect. It's really about just being authentic. I think sometimes less is more. Anyway, it's about the
Do you,
messages.
real quick on that one, you know what you're doing in the technical world. So you have an ease in saying it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be presented. That is such a powerful statement. And I know you probably didn't look at it much more than that, but because you're so comfortable in the tech world and all this other stuff, that, I that has been a personal thing for myself, that I learned that the things that I don't feel as confident with, I really volley with that perfectionism to procrastination thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the areas in which that's not my issue. It's amazing how much ease goes into it, where you just are like, it's okay, I'm good, like, it's all right, it'll be good, it'll all work out, right? It's like, because you know how it looks, right? And I think that's such a funny thing, because it will be great. I mean,
Well,
it'll be fine.
the truth is, I always realize I can do, with certain things I can do so much more if I. Yeah, I'm a little lazy too myself of sitting down to edit videos. Like, I don't know, my brain is
Mm-hmm.
just so fast all the time that I'm not great at sitting still. So, but
Mm-hmm.
and on top of it, of like, the my main Mac that I use is, I think I bought this Mac in 2014. So it's fine, but if I really wanted to up, then I'd have to, like, reload everything I already have loaded. And sometimes I'm just, not to say I'm like late, because it's not about, to me, it's not about all that as much as, like, if I can just come on and talk. I mean, I can do it with my phone. I can do Facebook Live or something. It doesn't even have
Mm-hmm.
to. And again, like what you're saying, I don't
I
look
think
at it
it's great.
that it has to be so. To me, it's about, I feel like I do feel very confident and comfortable and
Yeah.
presenting and speaking. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm sure I make a fool of myself in certain ways or whatever, but I really don't care. Like, I just feel like
Mm-hmm.
it resonates with me so much that this is what, part of who I am and what I do, that, like, I'm happy to put myself out there to the world. And if people want to judge me or whatever, I mean, I'm here to send good messages. I tell people all the time here, on Operation Status Quo, that they're welcome. Share, drop comments, let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you think about what I said. You have questions, a topic you want me to talk about. Do you want to come on and talk about something that you do? It could be talent, skill, anything. To me, I leave it open. I say it all. It's not. I mean, can speak all day long, but it's not about me. It's about building a community and bringing people together. Like the messages that we're sharing today, that I hope will help to empower people to realize how much they have within themselves. That they don't have to, be afraid or worried about who they have to answer to. You only have to answer to
Right.
yourself. And it's just like, get that
Right.
straight, and everything else will just kind of flow naturally. So,
Absolutely. I love the message,
yeah.
and it's so great. And I can't thank you enough for having me on. It was amazing to connect. You always know we could talk for hours. It's now like recorded. I always think, if I have I always had a thing in my head. I've been like, I would just love like a spiritual round table where I have the best conversations that are the most probably impactful, different insights, listening to like different spiritual friends that I have, or teachers, or just to learn. And it's like, I always in my head, like, I'm going to do a spiritual roundtable one day, like where everybody can just kind of like, and it can, guests can change and all that other
Yeah.
stuff, but it's just kind of like a different light, different sight, different vision, all the same mission.
And honestly, that'd be cool too, because you can do that easily. Like, if you're saying for yourself with the technical stuff, like Zoom, if we ever wanted to do something like that and you knew other people that wanted to be involved, like, I don't mind hosting, and like we can get together and do a Zoom meeting and just record the Zoom meeting, and then it could be uploaded on whatever social media platforms or your website or however you want to do it. So, it's
Yeah, very
there's
cool.
so many options with all that. But before I let you go, do you want to just direct people to anything you want to say about exactly what you do, or your business or your website?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it is ColleenStMichaels.com, and I am mentoring and coaching individuals to intuitively learn how to develop their skills. I work with light workers, helping them to clear out their clutter that's kind of holding them back from fully stepping into this next ascension step for them. And I also help people to connect with their angels. I also help people to develop mediumship skills, right? So it's like, I am so excited to teach all of these, you know, passions of mine, but it's really about the empowerment that we all have the ability. It's just like tuning into a radio station. And sometimes we have to move around that dial to get the frequency and the understanding of it, because light is information, darkness is lack of information. And Also going to be offering, I believe in June, is a group online session that is going to be teaching angels and intuition. I work a lot with coaches who want to learn how to intuitively shift their business and start using their coaching platforms and intuitively work with their guests and their clients rather than just, to help them reach their goals quicker, but using their intuition and also teaching. I also work with a lot of therapists who are, seeing that there's this great shift in our society and people are really hurting, and they're wondering what's going on. So there is a spiritual perspective to it, and it's really just helping helpers.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
ColleenStMichaels.com. I got the link dropped down there in the description box below. So please check her out and, do it for yourself, not for her, right? Do it for yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Sounds perfect.
Yeah. And then, Colleen, if you ever get a few minutes in your spare time, tell my grandmother I said hello. I love her and miss her very much.
You can talk to her.
I'm teasing. I know. I talk to her all the time. Believe me, I know. She's, she's, matter of fact, I was cooking something yesterday and I was ready to do something and I grabbed one pot instead of the other. And I didn't even think about it, right? I just grabbed one pot instead of the other. And I said, yeah, you're right, Grandma. This one will work better. I said, it's like the old, and it's like, wow.
Amazing?
I said, like, she just told me to do it this way, It was pretty funny.
It is, because that's what's so amazing about it is that a lot of times people think they're outside of us, but they speak through in us.
Yes.
Because they're speaking through that love and they're speaking through that connection, because that's the only thing that crosses is love.
Yes. That's a beautiful thing. That's all we need. That's for sure.
That's what they say. So have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I thank you for this opportunity and thank you for the chat. Always a wonderful time.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you so much, and you have a great rest of your day. And hopefully we can expand this in the future. So, and I'm going to send you a link to this so you can do what you want with it too.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Bye. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let me give a little round of applause for Colleen St. Michael. Absolutely amazing stuff. Don't you feel just so light and beautiful and happy after that wonderful conversation, inspirational, how much power we have, what we can do? Well, anyway, that's it for me today. I'm Pete Palmer. This is Operation Status Quo, where we observe the status quo and we learn to flow with the quo. And as we can see after today's talk, there's a lot of flowing to go on with all the quoing that's happening in the background. God bless each and every one of you individually as well as a group. You know how much I love you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, send this out to all your friends, your family, those you love, and of course, those you despise as well, because after all, they need the most help of all of us, don't they? All right, have a great one, everybody. See you again real soon. Operation Status Quo disengaged.